I saw the garbage bag from the very end of the driveway, even before the car had fully come to a stop. It was one of those thick, heavy-duty industrial bags, stark white, bulging awkwardly at the seams, sitting right there on the gravel curb next to the blue recycling bins. It looked like any other piece of unwanted junk waiting for the early morning city pickup. But then, as a sharp autumn wind caught the plastic, I saw it. A tiny, jagged piece of ivory lace was poking out through a tear at the top. Have you ever had a moment where time literally stops? Where the air in your lungs just turns to lead? I recognized that lace instantly. It wasn't just fabric. It was the specific hand-stitched floral pattern I had traced with my fingers in every childhood photo of my mother. The same delicate roses she had shown me when I was 6 years old. Annie sitting on her lap, asking why she looked like a princess in the picture. My breath hitched. I didn't even turn off the ignition. I just stepped out of the car and started running. My backpack slipped off my shoulder somewhere on the lawn. I didn't stop to pick it up. I reached the bag and fell to my knees, the gravel digging into my skin, but I didn't feel it. I ripped the plastic open with my bare hands, a desperate, animalistic sob breaking out of my chest. There it was, my mother's wedding dress. The silk was stained with road salt and coffee grounds. The lace was snagged and torn in 3 places. This was the dress she had worn 20 years ago when she married my father. This was the dress she had personally wrapped in acid-free paper just 19 days before she died, promising it to me for my own future. And now, it was being treated like kitchen scraps. I dug deeper into the bag, my heart hammering against my ribs so hard it felt like it would shatter. I found her mahogany jewelry box. The velvet lining had been ripped out. The compartments were empty. 3 generations of heirlooms, my grandmother's pearls, my great-grandmother's ruby ring, the diamond earrings my mother wore on her wedding day. All of it gone. Then I realized the small wooden chest was missing entirely. The letters. 16 years of handwritten birthday letters my mother had left for me to open after she was gone. 1 for every year from 15 to 30. Words she had written while dying, saving every ounce of her fading strength to leave me something no one could ever replace. They weren't in the bag. They weren't on the curb. They weren't anywhere. They were simply deleted. As if they had never existed, as if my mother had never taken the time to write them, as if her final gift to me meant nothing at all. I clutched the ruined silk to my chest, and I screamed into the empty street until my throat felt like it was bleeding. The neighbors probably heard me. I didn't care. I screamed until I had no voice left, and then I just knelt there, rocking back and forth, holding the only thing I had left of my mother, a stained, torn, garbage-soaked wedding dress. But here's what I need you to understand before I continue. This wasn't the end of my story. This was the beginning. Because as I knelt on that driveway, something inside me changed. The grief hardened into something else, something colder, something patient. The woman who did this, my stepmother, Karen, thought she had erased my mother forever. She thought I was just a powerless teenager who would cry, accept it, and move on. She was wrong. It took me 4 years. 4 years of watching, 4 years of documenting, 4 years of building a case so airtight that when I finally struck, she never saw it coming. My stepmother threw away my mother's things, and I threw away her future. But before I tell you how, you need to understand who my mother was, and exactly what Karen stole from me. Quick question before we continue. Have you ever lost something truly irreplaceable? Something that connected you to someone you loved more than anything? Drop your story in the comments. I read every single one, and I know I'm not the only one who's experienced this kind of devastating loss. All right, let me take you back to where this really began. My name is Hazel, and I'm 22 years old now. But to understand why I was screaming on a wet driveway 4 years ago, you have to understand the woman who was in that bag. My mother, Elena. She wasn't just my mom, she was my entire world. Elena Reyes Mitchell was the kind of person who filled a room without saying a word. She was an architect by profession. She designed community centers and libraries, spaces meant to bring people together. But her real gift was making everyone around her feel seen. She remembered the names of every cashier at our grocery store. She brought homemade soup to neighbors when they were sick. She stayed up late helping me with school projects, even when she was exhausted from work. And when I was scared, of thunderstorms, of the dark, of the monsters I was sure lived under my bed, she would hold me and whisper, "I've got you, baby girl. Nothing can hurt you while I'm here." She was diagnosed with stage 4 ovarian cancer 2 weeks after my 14th birthday. The doctors said she had a year, maybe 18 months if she was lucky. She had 6 months. 6 months of chemotherapy that made her hair fall out. 6 months of hospital visits that smelled like antiseptic and fear. 6 months of watching the strongest woman I knew become a ghost of herself. Thin, pale, her hands trembling as she tried to hold a pen. But she never stopped fighting. Not for herself. For me. 3 weeks before she died, my mother called me into her bedroom. The hospice nurse had just left. Mom was propped up against a mountain of pillows, oxygen tubes in her nose, but her eyes, God, but her eyes were still so alive. "Hazel, baby, come sit with me." I crawled onto the bed next to her, careful not to jostle any of the tubes, and curled up against her side like I had when I was little. She smelled like lavender and hospital soap. "I need to tell you about some things I'm leaving you," she said. I immediately started crying. I always did when she talked about after. "Shh, baby, this is important. I need you to listen." She pointed to her closet with a trembling hand. "My wedding dress is in there. I wrapped it in acid-free paper last week. It's yours now. I want you to wear it someday if you want to, or just keep it, but it's yours." She pointed to her dresser. "My jewelry box. Everything in there belonged to my mother and her mother before her. The pearls were my grandmother's. The ruby ring was great-grandma Rosa's. It's your history, Hazel, our family's history." Then she pointed to a small wooden chest sitting by her bed. "And those are letters. I've been writing you letters since the day you were born. One for every birthday all the way up to your 30th. I wrote them in case I wasn't there to say the words myself." Her voice cracked. "I won't be there, baby. I know that now, but I wanted to give you something. Pieces of me to carry with you, so you'll always know how much I love you, even when I can't tell you myself." I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. "Promise me you'll protect them, Hazel. Promise me you'll keep our memories safe." "I promise, Mom," I whispered through my tears. "I promise." She died 19 days later, and for the next 4 years I kept that promise, until Karen made it impossible. I need to tell you about those letters, because they weren't just paper, they were my mother's voice. I opened the first one on my 15th birthday, the first birthday without her. It read, "My beautiful girl, today you are 15. You're becoming a woman now, and I wish more than anything that I could see it. But I know you, Hazel. I know you're going to be extraordinary. Don't let the world make you hard. Stay soft, stay kind, and know that wherever I am so, so proud of you." At 16, happy sweet. 16, my love, I hope someone threw you a party. I hope you danced. I hope you're learning that joy and grief can exist in the same heart. At 17, you're almost grown now. I bet you're strong and smart and kind. I bet you're everything I hoped you'd be. I wish I could see your face. I wish I could hear your laugh. But even without me there, please know, you are my greatest achievement. I had 13 letters left to open when Karen moved into our house. 13 birthdays worth of my mother's words, her wisdom, her love, her voice, all of them, gone. My father, David, met Karen at a grief support group. I wanted to be happy for him. I knew he was drowning. I could see it in the way he moved through the house like a ghost, barely eating, barely sleeping, wearing Mom's old cardigan because it still smelled like her. I knew Mom would have wanted him to find love again. She'd told me so in one of her final conversations. Take care of your father, Hazel. He's going to need someone. Don't let him be alone forever. But 8 months? 8 months felt like a betrayal. Karen Holloway was 43 when she married my father. She was polished in a way my mother never was. Perfect nails, perfect hair, perfect smile that never quite reached her eyes. She worked in consulting, though I could never get a straight answer about what exactly she consulted on. At first, she was charming, brought me gifts, asked about school, said all the right things about respecting your mother's memory. But there was something behind her eyes, a calculation, a patience that felt predatory, like she was waiting for something. She moved into our house 3 months after the wedding, and the cleaning began immediately. Mom's photos were moved to the attic. Karen said they were too depressing, and we needed to focus on the present. Mom's favorite furniture got replaced. The cozy floral couch, the antique rocking chair, all swapped out for cold, modern pieces that Karen picked out. Mom's clothes, the ones Dad had kept in the closet because he couldn't bear to let go, disappeared while I was at school. Donated, Karen said with that patient smile. No sense keeping things no one will wear. Piece by piece, my mother was being methodically wiped from the map of our lives, and my father let it happen. I tried to fight back. I tried to talk to my father. Dad, she's throwing away Mom's things. Doesn't that bother you? He couldn't meet my eyes. Hazel, Karen is just trying to help us move forward. We can't live in the past forever. I'm not living in the past. I just want to keep some memories. Your mom is in your heart, honey. You don't need objects to remember her. Easy for him to say. He had 40 years of memories, 40 years of conversations, holidays, inside jokes, shared history. I had 14. 14 years of being her daughter wasn't enough. I needed every single object, every photo, every letter to keep her alive in my mind. But my father had already checked out. He'd handed the keys to our life over to Karen, and she was systematically changing every lock. So I stopped arguing. I stopped crying, at least in front of them. I stopped asking permission. Instead, I started hiding things. Mom's wedding dress. I moved it from the attic back to my closet, buried behind my winter coats where Karen wouldn't think to look. Her jewelry box. I kept it in a locked trunk under my bed, hidden beneath old blankets. The chest of letters. I moved it to the very back of my closet, behind a barricade of boxes. I thought they were safe. I thought even a woman like Karen would respect the private grief of a teenager. I thought a bedroom was a sanctuary. I was so wrong. The day Karen threw away my mother's things, I came home early from school. I had cramps so bad I could barely walk. The nurse called my father, but he was in a meeting, so she called Karen. Karen said she'd be there in 20 minutes. She never showed up, so I walked home, 2 miles in the November cold, hunched over from the pain. I didn't even make it inside before I saw the white garbage bag. After I finished screaming on the lawn, Karen came outside. She stood over me, arms crossed, wearing cashmere and an expression of patient disappointment. "Hazel, honestly, you're making a scene. The neighbors are going to talk." I looked up at her through tears and snot and rage. "Where are my mother's things? Where are the letters? Where is her jewelry?" Karen sighed like I was being incredibly unreasonable. "We needed the space in your room." "Sweetie, you can't hold on to everything forever. It's time to move on." "Move on? Those were my mother's things. She left them for me." Karen's expression didn't change. "The jewelry was appraised and sold. It wasn't worth as much as you probably thought. The money went toward household expenses." "You sold my grandmother's pearls?" "They were just pearls, Hazel. Things, objects. They don't bring your mother back." "And the letters? Where are the letters?" For just a moment, something flickered across Karen's face. Satisfaction. "I threw them out separately. They were just paper. Old paper, cluttering up space. I'm sure you have the important parts memorized by now." Just paper. 16 years of my mother's words. Her hopes for me. Her advice. Her love. Just paper. That night, I confronted my father. He came home at 7. I tired from work and found me sitting in the kitchen with the ruined wedding dress in my lap. "Hazel, what happened?" I told him everything. Every word, every item, every piece of my mother that Karen had destroyed. His face went through several emotions, shock, then confusion, then something that looked almost like guilt. But then Karen walked in, and I watched my father's spine disappear. "David, Hazel is upset about some old things I cleaned out of her room. I was just trying to help." He looked at Karen, then at me, then at the floor. "Hazel, please, Karen didn't mean any harm. She's just trying to help us move forward." "Move forward? Dad, she threw away Mom's wedding dress. She sold Grandma's jewelry. She destroyed the letters Mom wrote me." "I'm sure it was a misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding. If she did this deliberately, she's been erasing Mom since the day she moved in." My father closed his eyes, and then he said the words that broke something inside me forever. "Hazel, I think you're overreacting. Karen is part of this family now. We all need to make adjustments." Adjustments. My mother's entire legacy had been thrown in the trash, and my father called it an adjustment. I stood up slowly, picked up the ruined dress, walked to my room, and locked the door. That was the last time I asked my father for help. That night I sat on my bed with my mother's wedding dress, the only thing I'd managed to save. It was ruined, stained with coffee grounds and road salt. The lace was torn. The silk was damaged beyond repair. But I held it anyway. And I made a decision. I was 18 years old. I was powerless. I had no money, no allies, and a father who had chosen Karen over me. But I had something Karen didn't know about. I had patience. I had my mother's intelligence. And I had 4 years until I graduated college. 4 years to watch. 4 years to learn. 4 years to build a case so devastating that when I finally struck, Karen would never see it coming. "I promise, Mom," I whispered to the ruined dress. "I promise I'll make her pay. I don't know how yet. I don't know when. But I will find a way." The next morning, I did something important. I started writing everything down. I went to college that August. My father drove me to campus. Karen came along, playing the supportive stepmother. At the dorm, she hugged me and whispered in my ear, "I hope you've learned to let go, Hazel. The past only holds you back." I smiled at her. "You're right, Karen. I'm ready to move forward." She looked satisfied. She had no idea what I really meant. In college, I made a choice that surprised everyone who knew me. I had always loved literature. I dreamed of being a writer, an English professor, someone who worked with words and stories. But instead, I chose accounting. Not because I loved numbers, because I understood what numbers could reveal. If you want to destroy someone like Karen, you don't use emotions. You don't use anger. You don't use accusations that can be dismissed as drama. You use spreadsheets. You use bank statements. You use irrefutable, documented, legally admissible evidence. So I learned. While my classmates were at parties, I was in the university library, teaching myself forensic accounting. I learned how to trace offshore transfers, how to identify forged signatures, how to follow money through shell companies, how to build a case that couldn't be ignored. Every break, I went home. Not because I wanted to see Karen, but because I needed to observe. I watched her. The expensive shopping bags that appeared when my dad wasn't home, the credit card bills she intercepted before my father could see them, the phone calls she took in the garage, voice low and secretive, the way she flinched whenever my father asked about their joint accounts. I wrote it all down, every observation, every suspicion, every detail. I didn't know what it all meant yet, but I knew it would matter. During my junior year, I started digging deeper. I used the skills I'd learned in my accounting courses to research Karen's past. What I found made my blood run cold. Karen Holloway had been married twice before my father, but both marriages had ended in divorce. Both divorces had followed financial disputes, and both of Karen's ex-husbands had mysteriously lost their life savings during their marriages to her. I tracked down the first ex-husband, Michael, through social media. He was reluctant to talk at first. "She's in your past," I said, "but she's in my present, and I think she's destroying my father." Michael was quiet for a long moment. Then he told me everything. Karen had done the same thing to him, slowly drained his accounts, opened credit cards in his name, transferred money to accounts he didn't know existed. By the time he figured it out, she had already filed for divorce, and she'd positioned herself as the victim. "She's a professional," he said. "She finds lonely, trusting men and takes them for everything they have." The second ex-husband, Robert, had an even worse story. He'd tried to press charges. Karen had hired a lawyer and threatened to accuse him of domestic abuse if he didn't drop the case. He dropped it. "She's not just a thief," Robert warned me. "She's dangerous. Whatever you're planning, be careful." I thanked him. And then I kept digging, because I knew there had to be more, and during my senior year I found it. My mother had set aside $180,000 before she died. Money she had earned as an architect. Money she had saved specifically for my future, my college education, my first apartment, my wedding someday. It was supposed to be held in a trust until I turned 25. But when I finally gained access to the trust documents, I discovered something that made me want to scream. The account was empty. Every single penny had been transferred out 2 years after my mother's death, transferred to a shell company that, when I traced it back, led directly to Karen, my mother's final gift to me, the money she had saved while she was dying, the money meant for my future. Karen had stolen it all. All right, we're about to get into the revenge. Quick question before we continue. If you were in my position, if you had proof that your stepmother had stolen hundreds of thousands of dollars from your dying mother, what would you do? Would you go to the police? Would you confront her directly? Or would you wait for the perfect moment to destroy her publicly? Drop your answer in the comments. And let me tell you what I chose. The opportunity came during my senior year of college. Karen called me, unusual since we rarely spoke. "Hazel, your father and I are renewing our vows for our 5th anniversary. We'd love for you to be there." Renewing their vows. 5 years of marriage to the woman who had erased my mother. I said yes immediately. The ceremony was scheduled for April. That gave me 3 months to prepare. I hired a forensic accountant, a friend of a friend from my program who specialized in fraud cases. I gave her everything I had on Karen. What she found was worse than I'd imagined. Karen had embezzled over $280,000 from my father's accounts over 5 years. She'd opened credit cards in his name and maxed them out. She'd taken out a second mortgage on the house without his knowledge. She'd redirected my college fund, my mother's money, into her own offshore accounts. And she'd done it all while smiling at family dinners and calling my father sweetheart. The forensic accountant prepared a full report, 53 pages of documentation, bank statements, forged signatures, transaction records, a timeline of theft so clear and damning that any judge would convict. but I didn't want to just hand this to the police. Prison was too quiet, too invisible. Karen had humiliated me publicly when she threw away my mother's things. She'd made me feel powerless in front of my own father. And now, I was going to return the favor. The vow renewal was held at the country club. White linens, crystal chandeliers, flower arrangements that probably cost more than my monthly rent. 60 of the most influential people in our town, all gathered to celebrate Karen and my father's beautiful love story. And Karen? Karen was wearing a custom-made ivory gown. Ivory, the same color as my mother's wedding dress, the dress she had thrown in the garbage. The ceremony was beautiful. Karen and my father stood at the altar holding hands, reciting vows about forever and commitment and trust. I sat in the third row, a manila folder on my lap, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. After the ceremony came the reception. Toasts were scheduled, Karen's sister first, then my father's brother, then other family members. Karen had asked if I wanted to say something. Just a few words about family and new beginnings, I'd said. She'd been delighted. She had no idea what was coming. When my turn came, I walked to the front of the room with the folder in my hands. "Thank you all for being here today," I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline. "For those who don't know me, I'm Hazel, David's daughter from his first marriage." Polite smiles, scattered applause. I wanted to share something special about Karen tonight, something I think everyone in this room deserves to know. Karen's smile flickered, just for a moment. You see, 5 years ago, Karen came into our family and immediately started helping us move forward. She cleaned out old things. She updated the house. She took control of the finances so my father wouldn't have to worry. I paused. She was very, very thorough. I opened the folder. I pulled out the first document. This is a bank statement from 3 years ago. It shows a wire transfer of $45,000 from my father's retirement account to a shell company called Holloway Holdings. My father didn't authorize this transfer. He didn't even know about it. The room went silent. Karen stood up. "What are you doing? This is our anniversary." "Sit down, Karen. I'm not finished." I clicked the remote. A projector hummed to life. I'd coordinated with the venue staff earlier. The screen filled with bank statements, side-by-side comparisons of forged signatures, transaction records, account numbers. Over the past 5 years, I continued, Karen has systematically stolen over $280,000 from my father. She's opened credit cards in his name. She's taken out a second mortgage on our family home. And she's redirected my college fund, money my late mother saved specifically for my education, into offshore accounts. Gasps from the crowd. My father's face went white. "This is insane!" Karen shrieked. "She's lying!" "She's always been jealous of me." "I also have recorded statements from your 2 ex-husbands, Michael and Robert, both of whom you did exactly the same thing to, both of whom you threatened with false accusations when they tried to expose you." I pulled out one final document, and this is the most important one. My voice cracked for the first time. Before my mother died, she set aside $180,000 for my future. She saved that money while she was undergoing chemotherapy. She wrote me letters about it, about how she wanted me to have security even though she wouldn't be there. I looked directly at Karen. "You stole it all. Every penny of my dying mother's gift to me." I turned to face the 60 guests. Karen Holloway is not a loving wife. She's a professional con artist who targets grieving widowers. And now everyone in this room knows exactly who she really is. I set down the folder. "Oh, and Karen? The police are waiting in the lobby. I coordinated with them before the ceremony. I wanted you to have your moment in the spotlight first." Karen ran. She actually kicked off her heels and ran for the exit in her custom ivory gown. But 2 uniformed officers were waiting in the lobby, just like I'd promised. They handcuffed her right there, in front of everyone who had come to celebrate her beautiful love story. The reception dissolved into chaos. Guests were whispering, some crying, some frantically checking their phones. Karen was screaming that it was all lies, that I had fabricated everything, that she was the victim. The officers didn't care. They had the forensic report. They had the bank statements. They had the forged signatures. They had enough to hold her for questioning and eventually to charge her with multiple counts of fraud, embezzlement, and identity theft. I stood in the middle of the room, watching the woman who had thrown away my mother's memory get dragged out in handcuffs, and I felt something I hadn't felt in 4 years. Peace. My father found me as the guests were leaving. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Hazel, I had no idea. I didn't know. I looked at him. The man who had chosen Karen over me. The man who had called my grief dramatic. The man who had let a stranger erase his first wife from existence. I tried to tell you, Dad. 4 years ago, when she threw away Mom's things, I tried to tell you something was wrong. You didn't listen. I know. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't bring back the letters. Sorry doesn't bring back Grandma's pearls. Sorry doesn't give me back my mother's voice. He broke down. For the first time since my mother's funeral, my father truly cried. The trial happened 8 months later. Karen was charged with 16 counts of fraud, embezzlement, identity theft, and forgery. She tried every defense. She claimed my father had authorized the transfers. She claimed I had fabricated evidence. She even tried to claim she was the victim of a vengeful stepdaughter. None of it worked. The forensic accountant testified. Karen's ex-husbands testified. I testified. For 3 hours, I sat on that stand and told the jury exactly what Karen had done. To my father, to me, to my mother's memory. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty, on all counts. Karen was sentenced to 6 years in prison. She was ordered to pay full restitution to my father's accounts, and she was required to pay back the $180,000 she had stolen from my mother's fund. Every single penny. As the bailiffs led her out of the courtroom, Karen turned and looked at me. Her face was twisted with hatred. "You ruined my life," she hissed. I smiled at her. The same patient smile she had given me when she told me my mother's letters were just paper. "You threw away my mother's things, Karen. I just returned the favor. That was 2 years ago. Karen is still in prison. She'll be eligible for parole next year, but with her record and the testimony of 3 ex-husbands, I doubt she'll get it. My father and I are slowly, painfully rebuilding. It's not easy. There's too much history. Too many times he chose Karen over me. Too many words he can't take back. But he's trying. He calls every week now. He asks about my life. He listens. And last month, he did something that almost made me cry. He found a photo of my mother, one Karen had thrown away that a neighbor had actually rescued and kept all these years. He framed it, and he put it on the mantle, right in the center, where it belongs. People ask me sometimes if the revenge was worth it, if the trial, the publicity, the pain of reliving everything, or if all of it filled the hole Karen left. And the honest answer is no. Nothing will bring back my mother's letters. Nothing will replace 3 generations of jewelry. Nothing will undo the night I found that wedding dress in a garbage bag. But here's what the revenge did do. It proved that I wasn't powerless. It showed my father exactly who he had married. It protected other people from becoming Karen's next victim. And it honored my mother. Mom taught me to be patient, to be observant, to be strong, to fight for what matters. She taught me that justice doesn't always come quickly, but it comes. Karen thought she could throw away my mother's memory and face no consequences. She thought I was just a powerless teenager who would cry, accept it, and move on. She was so wrong. Revenge is sweet, but justice for Mom is sweeter. Have you ever lost something that can't be replaced? Something that connected you to someone you loved more than anything? Drop your story in the comments. I read every single one. And if you've ever been the invisible one fighting for the truth, hit that subscribe button. You aren't alone here. New stories drop every single week. And remember, the people who try to erase your past don't get to control your future. I'll see you in the next one.